Boeing called it the Dreamliner. The name was chosen by a public vote. Customers loved it. Airlines ordered it by the hundreds. Wall Street called it the future of commercial aviation. They weren't wrong about the plane. They were very wrong about the road to get there. In the early 2000s, Boeing had a problem. Its 767 was aging out. Airbus was on the march, and Boeing needed a next-generation wide-body, something efficient enough that airlines would cancel Airbus wide-body orders just to get on the wait list. The answer was the 787. Carbon fiber composite fuselage, all-electric architecture, 20% better fuel burn than anything in its class, bigger windows, lower cabin altitude. The engineers were genuinely proud of what they'd designed. But the board had a question. Who's paying for it? Building a new commercial airliner from scratch would cost around $10 billion. Boeing didn't want to carry that alone, so they came up with what looked on paper like a brilliant solution. They would outsource it. Not just the parts, the design, the engineering, the manufacturing. Roughly 70% of the program would go to a global network of more than 50 risk-sharing partners. They'd take on development costs. In return, they'd get a cut of revenue once the jet entered service. Boeing spread the financial risk. Suppliers got long-term contracts. Everyone won. Except that's not what happened. The rollout ceremony was the 8th of July, 2007. Boeing chose the date deliberately. Thousands attended. The aircraft was unveiled under dramatic lighting to applause and fanfare. One problem: the plane on the stage wasn't a real airplane. It had composite panels on the outside, plywood doors, no systems installed. Boeing disassembled it almost immediately after the ceremony. This wasn't just an embarrassing PR moment. It was a window into how badly the program had come apart. The global supply chain was in free fall. Suppliers in Japan, Italy, Kansas, South Carolina, none of them were communicating properly. Parts arrived at the final assembly plant in Everett, not ready to be assembled. Some weren't even complete. Engineers described receiving fuselage sections stuffed with thousands of loose fasteners that were supposed to already be installed. There was an 8-millimeter gap between the cockpit section and the fuselage. Parts from different suppliers simply didn't fit together. The delays came in waves. October 2007, 6 months. April 2008, delay. August 2008, another delay. Boeing started buying out struggling suppliers outright just to regain control of the production line. The company that had spent a decade getting out of the manufacturing business was now buying factories it never wanted to own. The original plan: develop the new aircraft in 5 years for $5 to $6 billion and deliver it in time for the 2008 Beijing Olympics. The first delivery happened in September 2011. 3.5 years late, development cost over $32 billion. That's a 158% cost overrun. In October of 2011, the 787 finally entered service, and the aviation world was genuinely impressed. Fuel numbers held up, airlines loved it. Then, the 7th of January, 2013, a Japan Airlines 787 had just landed at Boston Logan. A cleaning crew member saw smoke coming from the back of the cabin. A mechanic opened the rear electronics bay and found flames. The fire was in the lithium-ion battery pack for the auxiliary power unit. 9 days later, an ANA 787 in Japan received a battery malfunction warning mid-flight, necessitating an emergency landing. The main battery had experienced thermal runaway. One cell overheats, destabilizes its neighbors. The whole pack cascades into failure. The FAA grounded the entire global 787 fleet the very next day. The first time the agency had grounded an entire aircraft type since 1979. The NTSB investigation faulted the battery manufacturer for design flaws, Boeing for failing to properly test battery failure modes, and the FAA for certifying a system that wasn't ready. The fix took 3 months. Boeing designed a steel containment box, added external venting, and reduced battery charging voltage. The fleet returned to service in late April. The grounding cost hundreds of millions of dollars. But Boeing had bigger problems coming. While Boeing was managing the Dreamliner fallout, its engineers were working on another aircraft. Not a new design, a refresh. An update to the iconic 737 fitted with more fuel-efficient CFM LEAP engines. The problem was those engines were bigger. To fit them under the 737's low-slung wing, Boeing had to mount them further forward and higher than normal. That changed how the aircraft handled. Under certain conditions, it pitched up more aggressively than earlier 737 models. To correct for that, Boeing developed MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. It would automatically push the nose down if sensors detected an uncommanded pitch up. MCAS worked off a single angle of attack sensor. If that sensor sent a false reading, MCAS would activate anyway, and pilots who weren't aware the system existed couldn't easily override it. The 29th of October, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 crashed into the Java Sea minutes after takeoff. All 189 people on board were killed. Boeing and regulators issued guidance. The company insisted the aircraft was safe. The 10th of March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed in nearly identical circumstances. All 157 people aboard were killed. Regulators around the world grounded the 737 MAX that same week. Boeing lost its CEO. Production was suspended for a year. The FAA stripped Boeing of its authority to self-certify the aircraft. Direct losses from the MAX crisis exceeded $20 billion. Boeing recorded its first annual net loss in over 2 decades, a swing from a $10.5 billion profit in 2018 to a $636 million loss in 2019. If you thought Boeing had learned its lesson on quality control, it hadn't. Starting in the fall of 2020, inspectors began finding defects in 787 fuselages, skin panels not smooth enough, shims installed incorrectly at fuselage joints, minor on their own. In aggregate, they compromised structural integrity under load. Boeing quietly stopped delivering 787s in October 2020. The halt stretched into months, then a year, then nearly 2 years. Every undelivered jet had to be individually inspected and signed off by federal regulators. By the time deliveries finally resumed in August 2022, abnormal charges, customer compensation, inspections, and rework had cost over $6 billion in additional losses on top of everything that came before. Then in 2023, another defect. Defective horizontal stabilizer fittings in the tail. Another pause. Another round of inspections. The Dreamliner had become a recurring nightmare on the balance sheet. Step back and look at the total picture. The 787 program was originally budgeted at about $6 billion over 5 years by the most comprehensive estimates. The full cost, development, delays, battery crisis, quality failures, delivery halts, customer compensation, supplier buyouts, has run somewhere between $50 and $60 billion. One industry analyst put it plainly, had Boeing delivered the 787 on time, it would have been 5 to 8 years ahead of Airbus technologically. Instead, the chaos handed Airbus the opening it needed to build a commanding lead in the narrow-body market with the A320neo, while Boeing was drowning in battery fires, grounded MAX jets, and factory floor inspectors. Boeing lost over $1 trillion in market capitalization from its peak. It went from buying back billions in stock to drawing down credit facilities just to stay liquid. 2 aircraft programs, 2 groundings, 346 people dead in the MAX crashes. Decades of reputational credibility spent. The root cause, analysts broadly agree, was the same in both cases. Boeing had shifted from an engineering-led company to a finance-led company. Decisions about safety and manufacturing were increasingly filtered through the question of what they'd cost. The culture that built the 747, the 767, and the 777 had been slowly hollowed out. It didn't happen overnight. It happened across a decade of small decisions that seemed rational in isolation, but catastrophic in total. The 787 Dreamliner is still flying, still one of the most efficient wide-body jets in service. United has them. ANA still loves theirs. Delta recently agreed to purchase them. The plane itself wasn't the failure. The plan to build it was. Boeing is still here. But it came closer to the edge than most people realize, and it got there by forgetting what it was actually supposed to be good at. When you trade engineering culture for quarterly earnings, you don't notice the cost until you're reading crash reports and answering subpoenas. Boeing had to do both. Well, there you have it, how Boeing engineered its own demise. If you like stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. What do you think? Are you comfortable flying the 787? What about the MAX? I want to hear all about it in the comments. And I'll see you next time, right here on The Plane Window.